Have you ever reached a point in your life where you honestly wondered whether you were being blessed or punished? Where you looked at your own story and felt as though it was written in a harsher ink than everyone else's? You look around and it seems that other people glide forward effortlessly. Their homes feel warm and stable. Their finances seem predictable. Their bodies cooperate with them. Their smiles come easily. And then you look at yourself and realize that much of your life feels like a quiet battlefield that very few people notice. You wake up in the middle of the night with a weight in your chest that you cannot fully explain. Sometimes it has a clear name: a fear for your children, an unresolved conflict, a sickness, a temptation you cannot seem to shake. Other times it is just a nameless heaviness that presses down on your soul. And in those moments, the most painful question rises up almost uninvited. Where is God? Why does it feel like He has forgotten me? We live in a world that has carefully trained us to believe that blessing is loud and visible. Blessing looks like success that can be measured, comfort that can be displayed, approval that can be counted. We are taught, subtly and repeatedly, that if God is truly with us, then our path should be smooth, our prayers should be answered quickly, and our struggles should decrease, not persist. We absorb this way of thinking so deeply that we rarely question it. And yet, what if this definition of blessing is not only incomplete, but dangerous? What if it sets us up for despair rather than faith? What if the very things you are begging God to take away are actually signs that He is nearer to you now than He was when life felt easy? What if the burden you interpret as a curse is in fact a mark of divine trust, a quiet seal of election placed upon your soul? This is not the kind of message that flatters the ego or promises quick relief. It is the kind of message that steadies the heart when illusions fall apart. And it is a message that Saint Padre Pio understood not as an idea, but as a lived reality written into his flesh, his prayers, and his suffering. He knew that God often wraps His greatest gifts in the most difficult packages, not to confuse us, but to protect those gifts from being wasted on shallow faith. There is a profound mystery about true blessing that our age has largely forgotten, a mystery that does not trend well, does not sell easily, and does not fit neatly into slogans. Padre Pio of Pietrelcina lived close enough to our time that his memory still unsettles us. He walked among ordinary people while bearing extraordinary wounds. For decades he carried the stigmata, the visible marks of Christ's passion, wounds that bled, burned, and caused constant pain. He endured misunderstanding, suspicion, humiliation, and long periods where even the church restricted him. He fought spiritual battles so intense that the devil himself would appear to him, taunting, striking, and mocking. And yet, those who encountered him sensed a peace that could not be explained by circumstances. It was not the peace of comfort. It was the peace of union. Padre Pio revealed through his life that God's closeness is not measured by the absence of suffering, but by the depth of transformation taking place within it. He saw what most of us struggle to accept, that heaven's logic is reverse from the logic of the world. What the world calls success can be spiritual poverty. What the world calls failure can be the soil of sanctity. What the world calls a curse can be a fierce protection designed to keep a soul from losing itself. Today is not about comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel. It is about turning inward and honestly asking whether the pain you carry might be speaking a different language than you think. There are signs that do not look like blessings at first glance. They do not sparkle. They do not attract applause, but they make the enemy of your soul deeply uncomfortable because they signal that God is at work in a place that cannot be easily accessed or corrupted. Many faithful people today are suffering from an invisible wound that rarely gets named. It is not always dramatic. It does not always show up as open rebellion or loss of belief. It is spiritual discouragement, quiet and persistent. It sounds like this: I am trying, but it does not seem to be working. I pray, but my anxiety is still here. I go to Mass, but my family situation has not healed. I confess, but I still struggle with the same weaknesses. Somewhere along the way, you begin to conclude that something must be wrong with you, that perhaps you are doing faith incorrectly, that maybe God favors others more. This discouragement does not shout, it whispers, and its poison lies in how reasonable it sounds. We have unknowingly absorbed a transactional approach to God. We believe that if we put in enough prayer, enough sacrifice, enough effort, we should receive a predictable outcome. We treat the spiritual life like a vending machine. Insert devotion, receive comfort. When the comfort does not arrive, we assume either the machine is broken or we are unworthy of the product. This mindset slowly drains courage from the soul. It turns prayer into a performance and suffering into an accusation against God. It leaves you exposed, because when comfort becomes the proof of God's presence, discomfort automatically becomes proof of His absence. This is a fragile foundation. When the storm arrives, and it always arrives, faith built on comfort begins to crack. You start interpreting resistance as rejection. You look at your cross and assume it means you have failed. This is exactly the conclusion the enemy wants you to reach. He wants you to see friction as evidence that God is displeased, when in reality friction is often the sign that something is moving with purpose. A car parked safely in a garage never feels resistance. It is only the car travel toward a destination that feels the pressure of the wind. Resistance is not always a sign of error. Sometimes it is proof of direction. Padre Pio understood this with terrifying clarity. For 50 years he sat in the confessional at San Giovanni Rotondo, often for 12, 14, even 16 hours a day. He listened to the raw truth of human souls. He heard confessions from saints and sinners, from the powerful and the forgotten. God granted him the rare and heavy gift of reading hearts. He could perceive hidden sins and hidden virtues. He could smell the spiritual stench of unrepented mortal sin and recognize the quiet fragrance of humility. He learned that appearances are deeply misleading. He saw people who looked devout on the outside, but were consumed by pride within. And he saw others who came to him broken, ashamed, confused, convinced they were failures, who were in fact carrying immense grace. From this vantage point, Padre Pio knew something that challenges us. God often allows certain souls to struggle more intensely because those souls are capable of deeper union, not because they are worse, but because they are being shaped for something greater. He once said that the more God loves a soul, the more He allows it to be tested. This does not mean God delights in pain. It means He values transformation more than temporary comfort. If your conscience is sensitive, if sin troubles you deeply, if you cannot rest easily in superficial pleasures, this is not a curse. It is often the sign of a soul that cannot be satisfied with shallow substitutes. If you are misunderstood when you are trying to do what is right, if obedience costs you something, if fidelity feels heavy, these are not marks of abandonment. They are often marks of intimacy. Padre Pio knew that the devil wastes little energy attacking souls that are not moving toward God. Resistance intensifies when direction is clear. Many of the holiest souls feel unworthy precisely because they see their imperfections clearly. Pride blinds, humility reveals. The awareness of weakness is not proof of hypocrisy. It is often the beginning of honesty. Padre Pio would often rebuke those who despaired over their faults, reminding them that awareness of sin is already a grace. The danger is not falling. The danger is believing that falling disqualifies you from love. You may feel today that your life does not look blessed. You may feel worn down by the same prayers, the same worries, the same unanswered questions. But the presence of struggle does not mean the absence of God. Very often, it means He is closer than you realize, working in a place deeper than comfort, deeper than success, deeper than appearances. The blessings that matter most are not the ones that impress the world. They are the ones that quietly conform a soul to Christ. If your faith has been tested rather than rewarded, if your heart has been stretched rather than soothed, if your life has stripped you of illusions rather than filled you with ease, do not assume this means you are forgotten. According to the wisdom Padre Pio lived and taught, it may mean you are being trusted. Trusted with a cross that is shaping you into someone who can carry love more deeply, forgive more fully, and cling to God more honestly. So before you conclude that you are cursed, pause. Look again. The very weight you are carrying may be evidence of a blessing that is still unfolding. And if your soul feels tired, if your faith feels heavy, you are not alone. These are often the signs of a soul being refined, not rejected. In the spirituality of Padre Pio, the greatest danger to the soul is not suffering, hardship, or even repeated trials. The greatest danger is something far more subtle and far more lethal: lukewarmness mixed with spiritual pride. Suffering can purify, awaken, and drive a soul toward God. Pride and lukewarmness, however, quietly numb the soul until it no longer feels the need for God at all. Padre Pio understood this deeply because he saw it every day in the confessional and in spiritual warfare. He once said that the devil is like a rabid dog tied to a chain. Beyond the length of that chain, he cannot seize anyone. But if you approach too near, if you become careless, complacent, or proud, you let yourself be caught. What many people forget, however, is that the dog barks loudest at the ones who are pulling away, not at the ones who are already lying comfortably within reach. The signs we are about to reflect on are not medals to be displayed or titles to be claimed. They are not things that will earn you admiration or applause. They are marks etched quietly into the heart. Often they are invisible to everyone around you. Sometimes they even make you feel weak, ashamed, or confused. Yet in the eyes of heaven, these signs are powerful evidence that the Holy Spirit is actively at work within you, chiseling, shaping, and constructing something eternal. Before allowing these truths to touch you, it is important to slow down. This is not just content to be consumed. This is an invitation to self-examination, a moment to step out of noise and comparison and look honestly at your interior life. If you are willing, quietly whisper within your heart, "Lord, show me the truth of my soul," not the truth that flatters you, not the truth that condemns you, but the truth that heals. According to the wisdom lived and taught by Padre Pio, there are 3 signs that often indicate a soul is truly blessed in God's eyes, even if it does not feel that way. A holy unease about sin, a hidden cross that cannot be fixed, and an ongoing spiritual battle against despair, marked by a stubborn refusal to surrender. If you recognize even one of these in your life, it is not a mark of failure. It is a sign of grace at work. The first sign is a profound and persistent sensitivity to sin, a holy unease that disturbs your comfort. This must be understood correctly, because misunderstanding it causes great harm. This is not the same as scrupulosity, which is a form of spiritual anxiety where a person sees sin where there is none and lives in constant fear of offending God. Scrupulosity does not come from God, and anyone suffering from it should never fight alone but seek guidance from a wise priest or spiritual director, because God's voice brings clarity and peace, not panic and torment. What Padre Pio speaks of is something very different. It is a tender conscience, a heart that grieves when it wounds love. In the modern world, consciences are often numbed. Grave sins are committed without remorse. Evil is justified, explained away, or even celebrated. People grow skilled at silencing the inner voice that says, "This is not right." But if you feel a sting in your heart when you lose your temper, if gossip leaves you unsettled instead of satisfied, if certain conversations or behaviors make you feel internally uneasy even when everyone else seems comfortable, this is not a weakness, it is a gift. Many people misinterpret this interior pain as proof that God is angry with them. They think, if I were closer to God, I wouldn't feel this bad. The truth is often the opposite. The pain you feel is the proof that your heart is alive. A corpse feels nothing. A dead conscience does not ache. Only living flesh feels pain, and only a living soul feels sorrow for sin. If you struggle against a habitual weakness and you hate that weakness, if you fall and get back up again and return to confession even when you feel embarrassed or tired, you are not rejected by God. You are being held by Him. Padre Pio was famously severe with those who believed themselves to be righteous and complete, but he was gentle with sinners who knew their weakness and kept coming back. This holy unease is what keeps a soul from drifting into indifference. It keeps you humble. It keeps you close to the Father's house. Do not despise your repentant heart. It is not your enemy. It is the landing place of mercy. The second sign is the one most people resist with everything they have, even though it appears again and again in the lives of the saints. You carry a hidden cross that you cannot fix. We all have problems that can be addressed with effort, resources, or time. Some things can be repaired. Some situations can be improved, but almost every life contains at least one burden that does not move, no matter how fervently you pray or how faithfully you try. It might be a chronic illness that humbles you daily. It might be a marriage that feels lonely despite your faithfulness. It might be a child who has turned away from God, or a family wound that never fully heals. It might be an interior emptiness that no success, relationship, or distraction seems able to fill. These are the crosses that cause the most confusion. You pray for their removal and hear silence. You beg God, promising that if He takes this one thing away, you will finally be at peace, finally be holy. Innerly, be grateful. Yet the cross remains. Padre Pio's spirituality reveals something that is difficult to accept but deeply liberating. This immovable cross is not an obstacle to holiness. It is often the very path to it. Suffering in itself does not make a person holy. Love does, and love is proven when it remains faithful, even when relief does not come. When a cross cannot be removed, you are stripped of the illusion of self-sufficiency. You are forced to lean on God rather than your own strength. You are invited into hope, not as a feeling, but as a decision. In a mysterious way, you are allowed to share in the passion of Christ, not by seeking pain, but by uniting unavoidable pain to love. Padre Pio himself carried the wounds of Christ for 50 years. He begged God to remove the visible signs, not because he rejected suffering, but because he feared drawing attention to himself. God did not remove the pain, but He sustained the love that carried it. If you have a burden that brings you to your knees, you are not alone, and you are not forgotten. You are standing in the company of saints. That cross is carving out space within your soul, making room for a depth of grace that comfort could never produce. Complaining wastes suffering. Offering it transforms it. A cross carried with resentment will crush you. A cross carried with love will sanctify you. The third sign is a particular kind of spiritual warfare that many people misunderstand. It is the temptation to despair, fought again and again with a refusal to give up. At first glance, it seems absurd to call temptation a blessing. Yet Padre Pio taught that the enemy intensifies his attacks when he is losing ground. If you feel constantly tempted to believe that your prayers do nothing, that your efforts are pointless, that you are invisible to God, this does not necessarily mean you are weak. It often means your soul matters. Despair is one of the devil's favorite weapons because it paralyzes without requiring scandal. It convinces a person to stop hoping, stop trying, stop trusting. But if you are still fighting, still praying even when prayer feels dry, still clinging to God even when emotions offer no support, this stubborn perseverance is powerful. Padre Pio endured relentless attacks of discouragement and darkness, yet he refused to abandon prayer. He once said that prayer is the best weapon we have and the key to God's heart. If you feel exhausted by the battle but you have not surrendered, if you feel tempted to quit but you continue to show up, this is not failure, it is fidelity. Heaven measures victory differently than the world. Victory is not the absence of struggle. Victory is remaining faithful within it. If any part of your life feels heavy, if your faith feels more like endurance than enthusiasm, do not assume that God is distant. According to the wisdom of Padre Pio, these very struggles may be signs that God is closer than you think, working in places that comfort company, old never reach. And yet, despite all that noise, despite the accusations, the doubts, the interior storms, you are still here. You are still praying. Sometimes weakly, sometimes mechanically, sometimes with tears instead of words, but you are still turning your face toward God. And that alone is a sign of immense blessing. The devil does not waste his energy besieging empty fortresses. He attacks where there is treasure. He makes noise where something precious is being guarded. There are souls who feel nothing but ease and calm because they have quietly made a truce with the world, with compromise, with spiritual sleep. But the soul that is climbing the mountain feels the cold, the wind, the resistance. Height always brings pressure. If your life feels exposed to the elements, it may be because you are no longer living in the valley. If you are experiencing spiritual dryness, where prayer feels like speaking into silence, where scripture seems flat, where devotion feels heavy, yet you choose to pray anyway, that is not failure. That is pure gold. That is love in its most mature form. Anyone can pray when emotions cooperate, when faith feels warm and affirming. It takes heroic virtue to kneel when you feel nothing but dust and still say, "Lord, I am here." Padre Pio himself endured long seasons of interior darkness where God felt distant and consolation was absent. He once described those years as living behind a wall, unable to feel God yet choosing to remain faithful to every duty. He did not abandon prayer because prayer no longer rewarded him emotionally. He prayed because love had trained him to remain. If you have the stubborn spiritual tenacity to whisper, "Jesus, I trust in you," even when your emotions are screaming the opposite, then you possess a strength that is not merely human. You are being carried by a grace that the Church calls perseverance, the grace to endure in faith until the end. This grace is quiet. It does not draw attention, but it is one of the rarest and most powerful gifts God gives to a soul. It is the key that opens the final door. And if this sounds abstract or merely theological, listen carefully, because there is a truth here that once changed a man's entire life. It is a story inspired by the countless encounters that took place in the humble village of San Giovanni Rotondo, where Padre Pio spent his life receiving the wounded hearts of the world. There was a man who traveled a great distance to see him, driven not by curiosity but by desperation. This man was crushed by loss. His business had collapsed. His reputation had been destroyed by accusations he could not clear. His health was failing under the weight of stress and humiliation. He felt stripped of dignity, identity, and hope. In his mind, the conclusion was simple. God had abandoned him. He stood in line for days, rehearsing what he would say. He planned how he would explain his misery, how he would beg Padre Pio to pray that God would finally remove this curse from his life. He felt like a failure not only in the world's eyes, but in heaven's as well. When his turn finally came and he knelt in the confessional, he expected a quick judgment or a standard penance. He expected, at best, polite distance. Before he could even begin his list of complaints, Padre Pio lifted his eyes and looked at him, not with severity, but with a depth of compassion that pierced him. Padre Pio spoke softly, almost tenderly. He said, "My son, do you not see?" The man froze. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Padre Pio continued, "For years you were successful, and you hardly thought of God. You trusted your own strength, you were full. Now you are empty. Now you are on your knees. Now you are searching for heaven, because the earth has finally failed you." The words landed not as an insult, but as truth. The man began to weep, not from shame, but from recognition. Padre Pio did not stop there. He added, "Do not ask me to take down the cross that Jesus has crafted specifically for your shoulders. It fits you perfectly. It is the bridge that will carry you across the abyss. Go and thank God that He has deemed you strong enough to carry it with Him." That confession ended quickly, but its effect was permanent. The man did not leave with his problems solved. His business did not return the next day. His body did not suddenly heal. But something far more important happened. His despair evaporated. He realized that his suffering was not proof of God's absence, but an invitation into deeper intimacy. He returned home not with a lighter load, but with a stronger back. Not with fewer problems, but with a peaceful heart. He had been blessed all along, and he finally had the eyes to see it. So where does this leave you? It leaves you standing at a crossroads that every soul eventually reaches. You can continue judging your life by the standards of the world, measuring blessing by comfort, money, applause, and emotional highs, and remain trapped in frustration. Or you can choose to see through the spiritual vision that Padre Pio lived by. You can look at your sensitive conscience, your unmovable cross, your exhausting spiritual battles, and recognize them not as signs of failure, but as the fingerprints of God on your life. This is not an invitation to seek suffering. Life provides enough of that without our help. It is not a call to passivity or resignation. We are always called to grow, to heal what can be healed, to protect what can be protected, to love actively and responsibly. But it is a call to stop fearing the difficult places of your spiritual journey. It is a call to stop handing the enemy the victory of discouragement. It is a call to stop interpreting resistance as rejection. If you carry a holy unease, thank God for a heart that is alive. If you carry a heavy cross, do not curse it. Kiss it, and ask Jesus to place his shoulder under it with yours. If you are fighting the battle of trust, do not lay D. Own your weapons. Draw them. Pray the rosary not as a ritual, but as a sword. Fight, knowing that the outcome has already been decided. The victory belongs to Christ and you belong to him. Do something concrete today. Do not let these words dissolve into another moment that passes without transformation. Identify the one thing in your life you have been calling a curse, a mistake, or a problem. Perhaps it is a difficult person, a lingering pain, a memory that still wounds, a weakness you wish would disappear. In your imagination, take that thing and place it into your hands. Lift it up to God and pray simply, without drama and without conditions. Say, Lord, I stop fighting against your will. If this is the cross you have chosen for me, give me the love to carry it. Transform this burden into a blessing. As you go forward, remember this truth: when the nights are long and the prayers feel heavy, you are never walking alone. The saints and angels surround you. The same God who sustained Padre Pio through blood, misunderstanding, and darkness is sustaining you through your own wounds. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are being refined. You are being prepared. If you are struggling, it means you are in the fight. And if you are in the fight, you are standing on the side of the victor. If this message has stirred something in your heart, if it has shifted the way you see your suffering even slightly, make an act of faith today. Write with sincerity, Jesus, I trust in your plan for me. Let that sentence be your surrender, and if you choose to remain here, to listen, to learn, and to walk this narrow path with others who seek depth over comfort, know that you are not joining an audience, but a quiet fellowship of souls moving toward the same eternal home. Until then, may the peace of Christ, the peace that surpasses understanding, guard your heart and your mind. Stay vigilant, stay hopeful, and never forget that the cross is not the end of the road. It is the key to the gate.